if we would invest in resource efficiency, would that be compatible with the existing development strategies of the European Union? Could a Green New Deal work within the existing strategies and instruments? How would objectives, targets, timetables accompanied with monitoring mechanisms have to look like? And what arsenal of research, technological and financial instruments and programs would be required? And I will just walk you through the main strategies of the European Union. And if the main development strategy currently is the Lisbon strategy. And it says the European Union should become the most competitive, knowledge-based economy of the world with sustainable economic growth and more and better employment opportunities and greater social cohesion. This sounds fine. The Sustainable Development Strategy says we need to break the link between economic growth, the use of resources, and the generation of waste. This also sounds compatible with the overall aim of increasing resource productivity. So the question is, are decoupling of economic development and resource consumption and competitiveness compatible? So this is important for the economists, because the economists would like to increase the competitiveness of our economies. In Lombardy, for example, they would like to be more competitive than, for example, the region where I come from, or China. And is this idea of increasing competitiveness compatible with the idea of increasing resource productivity? So is there a correlation between competitiveness and resource productivity? And we found something quite interesting. We took here the growth competitiveness index of the World Economic Forum of Davos. They have developed an index to measure whether countries are competitive. And we compared this with our indicator on resource productivity, looking at the GDP divided by the direct material consumption of an economy. And when we correlate these two figures, these two indexes of competitiveness and resource productivity, we see here a correlation. We could say the countries which are least competitive have also the lowest resource productivity, and the countries with the highest resource productivity are also the most competitive countries. Why is that so? I mean, it's a nice, let's say, ecologically correct coincidence and correlation, but this correlation is, of course, not a causal explanation. So in science, we always try to find out why is it so, and we're not so much interested in these correlations because they cannot explain anything. So why is that so that the most competitive countries are also the countries which have the best performance in resource productivity? Now, if we look at the cost situation in the manufacturing industry, for example, in Germany here, we have a very interesting development over the last 10 years. Here we have looked at the cost structure from 1993 to 2006, and we compared the labor costs, which is red, with the material costs, the costs of resources in the manufacturing industry. And we found out that the material costs, the costs of raw materials that are used in the manufacturing industry, that this increased from about 38% to 44%. So companies, for example, car-producing companies, they have to pay higher prices for a ton of metal, for example, and this is why this share on the total cost increase. At the same time, the labor costs have been reduced. The share of labor costs in the total productivity costs have decreased from 27% to about 19%. So we are currently at a situation where the labor costs constitute about 20% of the total cost in the manufacturing industry, and the costs of raw materials constitute about 45%. So more than double of the costs in the manufacturing industry are generated by materials, by buying materials for producing, for example, a car, and the share of labor costs have been decreased. Now that's very interesting, because the consultants that go into companies and give advice to management, they usually tell, well, if you want to be more competitive, then you need to reduce on labor costs. You have to decrease the wages, and you have to throw out people. But empirically, this is the wrong advice. Empirically, we think it would make much more sense to increase the productivity, the resource productivity of manufacturing industry. So to use less material for producing a car and to make them lighter does not only make sense from the energy costs for the consumer. He wouldn't have to pay so much money for fuels, for example, but also for the producer it would make sense, because his car would become cheaper, it would become more competitive. So this is basically our explanation why there is a correlation between competitiveness and resource productivity. And this is, of course, also good news when it comes to develop regional development strategies and also development strategies for enterprises, because there is a win-win situation. You can put less pressure on the environment and increase your economic performance, and at the same time put less pressure on labor, because you fire less people. You probably need more experts in order to be more energy and more material efficient. So I would like to conclude with the programs, with what we can actually invest in on the European level in order to realize these potentials. And we have here a number of programs that could be used to increase resource productivity. We have the EU Framework Program on Research and Technological Development. We have the Competitive and Innovation Framework Program. We have the Environmental Technology Action Plan, which is going to be called Eco-Innovation Action Plan, and which will focus on resource and energy productivity. And we have the regional development programs. We could imagine that we could invent here a green light mechanism using national recovery funds and couple that with EU regional funds and EU research programs. I think for this region it would make sense to develop these kind of programs. We have done this in the region where I come from. We have already started to use European regional development funds, the structural funds, to invest in increasing resource productivity and energy productivity. And I suppose this project that we are going to discuss could also launch the same kind of activities. The title of the project Gjusti is quite interesting because we are working on the same on the same problems now. How to connect universities, schools, enterprises, and regional development strategies. I think this is exactly the questions that we need to solve right now. We need to, what we have called it, based on literature, a triple helix of eco-innovation, and this triple helix is constituted on, based on the government, the industry, and research. And we can develop programs in order to develop a triple helix which develops its own dynamics. Currently, for example, we have launched a European resource efficiency agency on the regional level, but also on the federal level. We would propose that similar activities are also launched on a European level. In Germany, we are quite successful in creating these kind of resource efficiency agencies that actually go into the companies and look at manufacturing companies and tell them how they can actually improve their resource productivity, how they can use less resources and less energy. We think this type of activity should also be generated on the European level and actually in every region in Europe. We could think that it makes sense to introduce a national resource efficiency fund, which would finance resource efficiency measures, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises, because the large companies, they already invest quite considerably in increasing their resource productivity, and we need more expertise, more engineers in the small and medium-sized enterprises. This can also be co-financed by EU regional funds, as I said. And we need resource-efficient public procurement. So if the state makes investments, he needs to invest, for example, in efficient buildings and efficient infrastructure. And there we need improvement, and we have in many regions considerable room for improvement. These were a few concrete measures that we have proposed on the European level. I think it could also make sense here on the regional level. As I said, in the region where I come from, we already do this on the regional level, and of course, you're more than welcome to look at how we do this, and maybe we can also exchange ideas. And I think we have a lot of common ground, and reasons to improve our competitiveness, to improve our resource efficiency, and eventually to change the model of development, the economic model that we are currently pursuing. Thank you very much for your attention so far.